Sitting back here, stand up.
Don't drag me out.
Lifetime friend. Helped a lot putting this event on. Along with, just much credit goes to the museum for everything. It's a tremendous amount of volunteer work from everybody around to make this happen. From the things as small as preparing the buildings to getting engines unloaded, the whole thing. It was just a big job. Everything went well. Very happy with it. As far as the planning of the event and all that, again, thanks to the museum, Woody, and myself. A little bit about Woody since he started collecting engines back in basically junior high school with farm engines, as I did. We grew up a few miles apart. Interest exceeded the budget, and then we started coming to shows like this, and one thing led to another, and found ourselves being volunteer engineers at the organization here. And interesting point in one of the late evening runs we had in the Susan building, I approached Preston Foster, and I asked Preston, boy, you know, the 30th year anniversary of the show is coming up, and wouldn't it be nice to do a Flaming Mission Expo? And it would be a 20-year anniversary of the event. It would also be a nice, great way to celebrate the 30th year celebration of the show. And Preston looks at me, and I'm thinking, okay, he's going to say, yeah, we'll have somebody do it. Looks at me, good, you're volunteered yourself, Wayne, do it. I knew what I was getting into, but anyways, that was 3 or 4 years ago, actually. And Preston went to the board talked about it, and they said, well, if you really think you're up to it. I talked to Woody, and we went back to Preston and said, yeah, we're going to tackle this. And it was a lot of work, but in hindsight, I'm really glad we did. We got a great core group of enthusiasts here together to see these rare engines. And one thing led to another, the book, and all this. So what I'm going to do tonight is we're going to start this, and we're going to do this in 3 sessions. The first part is just going to be a really brief overview of the show, what we got here. Next section is going to be a little more detail on the book, but I'm not going to labor on it, but just show some of the highlights, some of the chapters. Many of the chapters aren't shown, but I'll just show some highlights of it. And then at the end, I'm going to talk about the Schleicher-Schum Company and the slide valve years, and give some details and information on some of the engines that were sold back then. But I'd like to keep it very informal. If anyone has any questions along the way, just raise your hand and say, hey, what about this? And, you know, this isn't... This is just meant to be an informal, informative thing for all of us here. So. Okay. Yeah, for sure. Is it better? Yeah. No problem. Okay. First thing, okay, here we go. Brief overview of this year's Flame Ignition Expo. Like I said, that's the first thing. Second thing is introduction to the book, and third is the early years of the Schleicher-Schum Company. We started this out in kind of in honor of the event we had many years ago in 1995 with Paul Hardy, Nate Willbridge, and John Rex. And they had a heck of a task in front of them to try to put the event on and get all the engines there. There was some coaching over the years, whether John Rex knew it or not, talking about what he did and some of the engines he had hoped to get here. We tried to put on a show that was similar in proportion to that. Since that time, unfortunately, we've lost a couple of people that were involved in it, with Nate Willbridge and John Wilcox, but the theme and idea of the event lives on. Since that time, we've really not had another event that could top the Flame Ignition Expo of 1995. Noonan has been in the limelight over the past several years. They had a fantastic show 2 years ago, which Woody Sims, myself, my dad, and many collectors from the United States and different countries went to. And the variety of engines they had there rivaled anything I'd ever seen. We had Swiss engines, French engines, German engines, English engines. It was just a spectacular event. And at that time, we had pretty much committed ourselves to putting on the event here, so we started handing out flyers to all the collectors at the Noonan show over in Holland. So that was the beginning of the promotion. We also started putting little bits of information out on the internet that our event was going to be coming up. And this is a screenshot from the videotape that is, I believe it's still available at the gift shop in the Coolspring Museum. Fast forwarding to this year, some of what we were trying to accomplish here was an increased exposition space with what we had in the 1995 event. We have 4 buildings of available space. I think we filled 3 of them up pretty good. Threefold increase in guest engines from the 1995 event. Very strong international attendance. We have the advantage today we didn't have back then of the internet and electronic media and social media. We have at Facebook, so we tried to use some of that to our advantage. I'm not a stellar person in that capacity, but we got a lot of people to participate. Sarah Riffle helped a whole bunch with the Facebook part, and we got the message out there. And from the international presence we have here, I think it was quite clear. Well, it's exciting. And there's a greater understanding of the early slide valve engines and flame ignition engines too. There's more published than we had before. And with YouTube videos and things of that sort, people can see engines and examples of what is out there that, and back in that time, we didn't even know they existed. So the awareness is much higher, and I think that helps a lot to the success of this event. Originally, as planned, I was hoping for 30 original flame ignition engines, but we greatly exceeded that here. We've got, including reproductions and full-size engines, we've got, I think, 38 is what I counted the other day. So it's pretty good. I don't know how many models there are. I haven't even had a chance to get out in the field, so you people that have had the chance to walk up and down the aisles, I know there's lots of Schoners, there's Leak, Paradox, some unknowns. So we've got a great representation of the early small models and scale devices that were made over the years. An impressive selection of rare non-flame ignition engines. Like I said, I didn't get out to the field, but I saw a couple Van Duzens on one trailer, some really nice Bens up on the hill. We got some extraordinarily significant engines to view this time also. The bores and strokes for this year, if you're on the mailing list for the museum, they were mailed out earlier this spring. And it was intended to be a field guide for the engines that were displayed for this event. And that was written by my co-organizer here, Woody Sins, and did a fantastic job on it. So it's kind of a neat field guide to be able to open this up and get a little bit of a description on what you're seeing and the significance of it, a little bit of history. Woody also included some cycle information on how the different non-compression and four-stroke and direct flame injection engines work. So that's a great thing. If you're on the mailing list, I strongly suggest you go to the gift shop and get a copy of it, not as a sales pitch, but it's good information in it, and it's very well written. A little bit more about the 30th anniversary show. Engines were brought here from coast to coast. We had things here, engines brought here from California, Oregon, Kansas, Texas, everywhere. So we got tremendous dedication from the collectors with these engines to come out here and help us out. And also, we used some of the justification for the addition on the Susan building, thinking ahead of what we were going to need for the show, rather than rent tents or temporary structures to house all these engines, and that's just a one-time cost you can't recoup. We used that to partially justify some of the reasoning for the building addition, which I think was excellent. As I said before, the planning for this event began 3 years ago. This year we've really hasn't been online yet, but we got the Coolspring Power Museum YouTube channel. We're going to populate that with lots of videos of the show here shortly after we get a chance to breathe. Our buddy here, Travis Benner, has offered his services to help us with videoing the event and also taking photographs of all the exhibits of the flame ignition category and the rare category and anything else that's significant to see in the show. We've got plaques for all the people that brought in engines for the flame ignition show. And if you haven't gotten from me, please see me tomorrow. And I'll make sure that you receive the exhibitor's plaque for the event. We also, this year, we put together an illuminating gas stand so people can run models, and the crown exhibit we put together this year. Well, a little bit about the book. I guess a lot of you have got that from what I see, so it's, I've already signed a bunch, but that's good. It's a museum publication. It's meant for the museum to benefit. It's to spread the word about flame ignition. I wasn't really planning on having it ready for this event, but upon the strong encouragement of certain members of the museum, I had to agree that it was a good idea to have this done for the expo. I mean, it made perfect sense. So we put a big push on it in the last several months, and my fiance Tracy can attest to that. It's converted the kitchen into a publishing room for a while, and made it happen. So the concept of the flame ignition book actually started as a booklet to help support the show. And as I got into it, it was impossible. It was just way too much information. And the more I researched, the more I found, and the more I wanted to print. So I decided that had to be a more formal publication. But it represents about 20 years of research. Some of it dates back to my high school days, but most of it happened in the last 20 years or so. It's pretty much an all-inclusive history of the operation manufacturers involved in the whole evolution of flame ignition from around 1800 up to 1900, maybe a couple of years past. It has an introduction that coincides with the feature show, a brief overview of the book. I'll start here. Flame ignition, it has chronicles engines built in the